The final person we will be fake trading today is UCLA legend. I actually don't know if we consider him a legend, but Zach LaVine. Dave, where do you want to send him to?
Um, Unfortunately, I just don't think Zach LaVine is a winning player, and I just don't think he's got much of a market. So you might as well send him somewhere that's fun. LaMelo Ball could use a running mate like Zach LaVine, a guy who can take pressure off him, who can score, who can catch some lobs. They would look great together. Send him to Charlotte for Gordon Hayward, James Bouknight. It's a throwaway on Bouknight. You get Hayward for this push to the play-in that the Bulls are making behind Kobe White. You add a veteran, a guy who can handle the ball, he can defend, play the wing. I just think that this is a trade that's about getting Zach LaVine out of Chicago, allowing the Bulls to really focus on the future a little bit more. And I think Charlotte would have to throw in some sort of pick compensation, at least a pick, if not two. But LaVine and LaMelo Ball is fascinating. You're not going to get any defense at all, but they will score. And as we've seen with the Indiana Pacers, if you can score night in, night out consistently, if this could be a top 8 offense, you're going to win a couple games.
Time. All right, Mike, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also kind of sending Zach LaVine off to Hoth a little bit, but I'm sending him to San Antonio, which is at least probably a little bit nicer. I think it's time to get Victor Wembanyama some help. Like the guy needs help, man. He needs somebody who can break down a defense. So I'm sending out Doug McDermott, Devontae Graham, Chetty Osman. Send them out to Chicago. Get some kind of pick situation going in there. I think probably a little bit. This alleviates the cap situation for Chicago in the immediate term. Let them start their tear down, rebuild, whatever. San Antonio, their books are so clean. They can eat like 2 Zach LaVine contracts and still be okay. And you know what? Like, they need the help. That's the most important thing for them, is the development of Victor Wembanyama right now. You get a guy who can score, who can open up the floor, who can create some spacing in that offense and help Wembanyama, and like, he just needs it. And so I think you worry about that first. You worry about the books later. And by the time Wembanyama is really good,
by the time Victor Wembanyama is really good, he hasn't touched the basketball because he plays with Zach LaVine, right?
No, by the time he's really good,
like
you can trade him.
Doesn't
You can
enjoy
trade
watching
LaVine.
Victor Wembanyama do stuff. For me, I say, look, you need to get an old school pass first point guard in there, not Zach LaVine, who has shown, I don't know that he can make a post entry pass. I don't know what his passing into pick and roll looks like. Zach LaVine has never been that guy. This is why I would put him with LaMelo Ball, so he doesn't have to be that guy. He doesn't have to focus on other people. He can just go out, get his. He will provide some spacing, but in the process of getting his buckets, that's what he does. High usage. He is not going to feed. Look, Victor Wembanyama already has an issue touching the basketball. Already. And he's playing with far worse players than Zach LaVine. I think Zach LaVine is fine. Maybe he's not a great player and might not be a good player, but he's a better player than most of the guys in San Antonio right now. I'm going to give him that credit, but he also is a gunner. A 40% usage would not be out of the question for him. Could you imagine how many times Pop would have to yell at him? We would get some all-time theatrical television out of the interactions between those two guys.
Listen. First of all, you said it already. He's better than what the Spurs have right now. You know who can't throw an entry pass? Anyone on the Spurs. I've watched them try. It hasn't been pretty. Zach LaVine doesn't need to throw entry passes. He needs to throw lobs because he's breaking down the defense and Wembanyama gets open underneath the basket. All right. They need someone to score the damn ball on the Spurs. You can figure it out. You can make Wembanyama learn how to play alongside him. You can make Zach LaVine learn how to play alongside Wembanyama. The contract, who cares? By the time Wembanyama is in his 4th season, that's already an expiring deal. So you can move on from that. It's not going to hurt you. And let me tell you something else about Olympic gold medalist Zach LaVine, who has a history of winning under Greg Popovich. All right, let's bring that back. Put that in San Antonio, that gold medal DNA. It's perfect for the Spurs. Like, we've seen it work before. Zach LaVine plus Greg Popovich equal, I was going to say rings, but I think they got a medal. So, like, medals.
I was going to ask you that, Dave. I saw a clip today on Twitter, I think, of just like Pop coaching. I don't know if you guys have seen that clip.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what I was wondering. I'm like, what like the assumption of who Zach LaVine would be as a player, does that change under Pop? Like
I
if he
mean,
was,
it maybe does. I would just say that Team USA, Zach LaVine, is going to be different than San Antonio Spurs, Zach LaVine. That just plain and simple. His position in the hierarchy is just going to be completely different. He's nowhere close to the best player on Team USA. He'd be the second best player in San Antonio. Second most important at a minimum, but second best because Victor is probably already better. So I just think that, you know, when we compare how guys do with national team, where it's only stars, only peers, and often you're not the best one, especially in Zach LaVine's case. I just don't think that you can translate that to what it would be like on an individual team. Although I bet him and Pop would get along great. Because I mean, Pop's never had a guy who can score like that. I mean, Manu was probably the last one. So I mean, there's a lot of positives there, but I think the negative on-court effect for Victor Wembanyama is worth not doing it for San Antonio. No matter how much more competent Zach LaVine is than any of the yahoos that are out there right now. I mean, you ever watch a Spurs game?
Yes.
Okay. It can be a hard watch, especially if you're like me and I'm really only watching for Victor. I just want, what's he going to do? Because he does something every game. And you're sometimes waiting 4, 5, 6 possessions before he gets the ball in an advantageous position. I mean, it is incredibly frustrating. So I'm with you. I want him to have a player of the caliber of Zach LaVine. I don't want it to be Zach LaVine.
I mean, I think Dave's just being selfish because he wants to watch Trey Jones, Victor Wembanyama pick and roll for the rest of his life. And
Hey,
I think that's
have
wrong.
you looked at Victor's numbers since Trey Jones entered the starting lineup? He's become incredibly efficient in those games. I mean, just having a competent ball handler who is willing to pass matters. Jeremy Sohan, I think he's going to wind up being a good player. He was not thinking about passing at any point in his tenure as a Spurs point guard. So I mean, anybody. Bork, it could be you because you would be like, you know, I can't do this. I got to pass. Where's the tall guy? Like,
I throw a good
it
entry
seems
pass.
so like natural to me. Find the tall guy who's really good.
Yeah. But you know what? Here's the thing. Think about the knock-on effects for Victor Wembanyama if you trade for Zach LaVine. Blocks per game go up. Rebounds go up. Like, how's that not good for Victor? For the NBA to see his stats climb rapidly in his first few years in the league. You want to
Zach
sell
LaVine's
a star, you
defense
need
is
numbers.
so bad. Victor Wembanyama could break the blocks record. Now, that's an angle for a player acquisition I've never heard before. You should be an agent, Mike.
We're here to change the game.
I got one final question for you guys. Neither one of you guys listed a current contender at least. And so my question is LaVine just not a good fit for any contender this year or this season?
I mean, he makes $40 million, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where you got to start. He makes $40 million this season. And so you know, making the money work for a contender requires them to send out a good player. And how many good players are available in a Zach LaVine trade? Not many, if any. So yeah. I think that's what you run into. Like, I think Zach LaVine is an NBA starter. Zach LaVine is not the third piece of your big three. And $40 million is that kind of money. And so, yeah, none of the contenders, I mean, he would help a few teams. He would help the Lakers for sure. And you could see where he could fit playing off the ball from LeBron James. You also wouldn't have to worry about any of the pecking order stuff because there's just no way you go into the Lakers and, you know, don't know what your role is. So he could theoretically help, but it's cost, you know?
Yeah.
Does Zach LaVine make them a championship team? No.
I mean, that's the problem. I think now you're going from talking about basketball to talking about, like, you know, advanced accounting or whatever.
I know.
You just have to consider you're going 40 this year, 43, 46, 49 by the last year of his deal with a new second apron and like the new like difficult and very, very costly CBA rules. It's just tough to trade for a guy who makes that much unless he definitively is your last piece or he's someone so good who's worth it. Zach LaVine's not him. It's not, you know, it's not his fault. Like, he's just a really good guy who rightfully took the money when he should have. And then a new CBA came around and just made his contract painful. It's just, it kind of just is what it is. We're not, you know, it's just, now we get into nerd CBA accounting instead of basketball stuff.
I hate thinking about these guys as little contracts running around on the court, but that little contract can't throw a post entry pass. So I don't want to see him playing with Victor Wembanyama.
Now I'm watching. I imagine remember how Bill becomes a
Yeah.
law from Schoolhouse Rock. I'm imagining him
only
trying to throw an entry
Bill.
pass.
Yeah.